And yeah, I think the next session probably speaks to that as well, because this digitization journey within companies it's all about innovation. It's all about changing how you do things. It's all about optimizing what you've got within your company, whether it be data, whether it be human resources, etc. Shaping the digitization journey in the insurance industry. We have found that in the discussions that we have with companies, with industry leaders, etc., that one of the big issues is that most companies don't really understand that journey, that timeline as to where do you start in the digitization journey. It's not plugging in an app. It's not just putting a new platform in a brokerage or an advisory practice or an admin system into UMA. It's about a strategy of digitization. It's a business that has to evolve, that has to transform. And so it's more than just about technology. So for that purpose, we brought together 3 experienced people in this industry. I'm going to just run you quickly through who we've got here. We've got Clinton da Costa Brown. I've known Clinton for many years in different hats that he's worn. He's the solution sales advisor at SSP. Clinton, he's a seasoned insurance professional, more than 2 decades of experience in the South African and the African markets. He's had roles with industry leaders such as Aon, Momentum, Sanlam, and also his own independent brokerage. So yeah, it brings a wealth of wisdom and a few different hats. Yeah. Then we've got Elliot Schwartz, independent consultant. Elliot's a seasoned business leader and advisor with global experience, former CEO, marketing director. He's a serial entrepreneur. He holds select advisory roles and board positions. He's got deep expertise in strategy, marketing, and business development. And yeah, he supports business leaders with insights shaped by a rich and diverse career. And personally, I've learned a lot from my interactions over the last 20 years with Elliot. So I'm quite confident that he's going to bring some really great insights. Lastly, we've got Bruce Sard. He is COO at Quest Insurance Innovators. Same thing. I met Bruce the first time when I headed up product development at APSA. I was actually Bruce's client. He used to do digital campaigns for me. And yeah, I got to know his expertise since then and had many other interactions with Bruce. Bruce is a recognized authority on direct and digital insurance distributions, especially in emerging markets, having been regularly invited as a speaker at international conferences and interactions with large organizations such as Swiss Re, Continental Re, Kenya Re, Deloitte in the USA, International Insurance Society, and of course the AIO, African Insurance Organization, and later the Sanlam Group. So great experience here, more than 2 decades. And yeah, his experience lies South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, the Middle East, Lebanon, Egypt. I think bringing a wealth of industry knowledge to us. So yeah, I mean, the whole idea is about talking about digitization in insurance. It's no longer just a future ambition. It's something that has to happen right now. It's a present day imperative. But for many insurance, the cost that involves in making a mistake, making a wrong decision, etc., that journey is complex. And it's not as simple as just saying, oh, no, we'll put a new system in. So yeah, that's where we're going. So I'm going to kick off with Clinton. Maybe Clinton, just giving us a little bit of perspective from your side as to how you've seen the digitization journey in insurance companies when you consulting and assisting them with implementation.
Tony, thanks very much for inviting us. Thank you for the time, opportunity to, talk across this very important subject with Bruce and Elliot. And I think some of the insight from discovery is certainly, in my broken time anyway, data was always where it sits, and a lot of my discussion will be around that. So I'm just going to bring up some slides if you don't mind, just to give some context to some of the points. Just tell me where you can see the slides.
Yeah, you can just make it full page. There we go.
Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so I think I'd just like to share some insights into the digitalization journey, which ultimately enables where everybody's trying to get to, and that's automation, the return on investment, and obviously AI. I focus, I think, largely this audience is around distribution and business audience as opposed to IT. So whilst I come from or represent an IT system platform provider, certainly I'd like to give some context as to where we're moving and what's important within this in respect to digitalization. Digitalization has been around for many, many years, and certainly in South Africa, I think we're quite mature in understanding some of those aspects. But certainly in 2025, if you look at the major imperatives at the moment, and Robert spoke around the margins, and I was reading the KPMG's report, the latest report in July, and certainly what you're seeing there, they're stating 75% of insurers are looking to at least achieve a 10% reduction in the next 5 years, but only 25% of those have actually reached those goals. Now, it's not the strategy necessarily that insurers and brokers and UMAs are necessarily not getting right. It's really the execution. So the execution understanding, how do you actually move to automation and AI, and certainly a context of digitalization. And if you look at digitalization, the focus is purely to focus on straight-through processing, stronger fraud and leakage control, and ultimately that leads to a lower cost to serve your customers. And that's the critical aspect of where we need to have a look at. If you look at a customer's expectation, certainly today we're benchmarked against other players. So it's no longer just insurance. We have banking, we have ride-hailing apps, we have instant quotations, same day, simple payouts, etc. And certainly customer expectations are changing. Instant gratification, we always joke with our kids, but ultimately customers today, if they can't achieve something through a single click, they get frustrated and they move on. So that's a major, major issue. From a regulation perspective, we talk about costs, and we know that regulation plagues us, it's a challenge, but certainly in the context of digitalization, the critical aspect is around trust, and trust that consumers have on us and understand around the regulation and being able to explain every single decision. So within a system constraint, we need to understand the decisions. We need reason codes. We need an absolutely complete audit trail, and we need to be able to hand that information back to obviously our people to be able to explain that to individuals. There was a case in point a little while ago in America, difficult one, an insurer, medical insurer, and I think you've all seen it, was murdered over decisions. And there was a question really whether that was around automation, whether there was AI involved, and whether insurers are just moving ahead a little bit too quickly in respect of making decisions without the actual insights. And then data explosion, and Discovery spoken about, and I remember the days it was always around data. But in the context of digitalization, data is a big, big issue at the end of the day, because data ultimately only pays when your processes are clean. And today, I think we're still seeing there's too much dark data. So data lacks structure, and the events that ultimately move through, they're not being processed successfully. So in order to modernize the flow, to modernize the actual solution, you need to absolutely look at modernization of the entire flow and not just the application data. And I thought I'll just quickly touch on some contextual terms. We throw them around. What are they? But ultimately, important to understand where those currently sit. So I think in South Africa, we're pretty mature in respect of being able to move from paper to a digital aspect, so that's no problem. From a digitalisation perspective, that's the critical aspect, and that's what we're talking about today. And digitalisation is really redesigning data around enabling self-service, straight-through processing, and APIs. So the key performance indicator, you need to move the straight-through processing percentage up and ultimately reduce the amount that human beings are pushing through and spending time within the actual solution. And that's a critical aspect moving forward. And it's a lot more difficult than you think. From a digital insurance perspective, we don't operate just in South Africa, so we operate in a variety of different territories, the UK, Australia, across parts of America as well. And certainly what we're seeing that if you move into digital insurance, you're not designing digital first products, and you're simply trying to clone and change your product, your current products, and not move into digital space, that becomes a major challenge. So you need to launch digital products and channels that are embedded into your actual process and journey, and look and understand specifically at the conversion rates and loss ratios that exist within that particular area. And then automation, AI, I'm not going to talk about. I think there are a lot of talks that other guys are going to touch on, but certainly being able to digitalize and get into digitalization will enable the automation journey. But what is critical around these specific steps, the order matters. In order to actually get to the point of increasing your ROI, you need to ensure that you get all these components right in the correct order. Certainly you can do them in parallel, but certainly you need to be able to digitize and then move into digital insurance. There are a lot of areas and a lot of challenges around. There's a question. So yeah, so there's a lot of reasons why it's quite difficult. Just purely looking from a systems perspective, we see two primary major challenges and focuses. The first one is being able to digitize your core journey, and that's critical going forward. And the second one is looking at your policy administration solution. So yes, ultimately people are trying to get to an AI-driven policy administration solution, but that's not necessarily the actual answer. The critical thing is you need to ensure your policy administration system is the foundation to InsurTech and your modernization and moving into actual automation AI. So I looked at really the maturity curve to understand. If you go back to KPMG, they're talking about execution. So it's not necessarily the strategy that insurers are failing on, but it's really the execution. And organizations are really trying to, in our view, get to automation and get to AI and bring in AI too quickly. Often we talk to organizations to understand what are they trying to do within AI. They don't understand the use case. They don't understand whether it's customer experience, distribution, engagement, operational efficiency, core insurance processing, strategic emergence. There's a number of core areas specifically where you need to use AI within an automation within your structure, but they don't necessarily understand where they sit in the maturity curve. So it's really 5 stages: digitalization, then moving into automation, and then it's all around data, and then moving into the prediction. So using machine learning, forecasting outcomes or classifying cases, so decisions in the insurance process can be made productively, so proactively rather than reactively, and then actually adapting and moving in and bringing those AI loops and models that ultimately we want to move to. But what we have found that in probably step 2 and 3, that's where organizations are currently getting stuck. They try and move to step number 5, but ultimately the biggest contributing factors which they're still struggling across, and even in South Africa today, and that's around messy data and your brittle core policy administration solution. So I want to quickly just touch on some aspects around messy data. I'm certainly not an expert, but understanding, and I think most people on this webinar clearly understand data, and they clearly understand messy data. And messy data is basically attributed to 4 or 5 specific areas. So it's missing information, policy, claim, numbers, you name it. The second aspect, which is critical, and we see that across a variety of different territories, specifically outside of South Africa, and that's really around finding an individual client. So having an ID for an individual client. In South Africa, it's quite easy, but in other countries, not necessarily. The other one is looking at forms or with blank wrong fields. They don't simply match to your actual system. And then obviously using OCRs, PDFs, etc., the information, the data that comes through doesn't match into your actual system field. So how do we see it? And from a distribution, I can remember, we see it as a situation, the system doesn't work. The report doesn't work. CEOs say it's a system, but it's not the system, it's sort of around data. So what you'll see is a lot of keying backwards and forwards. People are sitting around looking at data as opposed to finding models to actually get that data through. So claims are not being paid out in a manner that is required or needed. Reports don't match. And then ultimately your AI pilots or your AI projects that you're looking to bring in, they become a black box and they're using dirty data and they're starting to learn, and the models are starting to be brought into your business based on that poor data. So how does it actually happen? It's really around the source. We know this. People are not completing the information. Everybody's using their own spreadsheets, and we find that to be a major problem from a system perspective. Trying to get an insurer, to get a broker, and a UMA and others, to have a single way of bringing that data into the system. And data has no owner. So one of the biggest challenges across businesses we find, nobody's really looking at data in a single context and a single ownership to understand how do we draw the data from the IT guys, business, right through to the broker. Ultimately, why do you need to care? And I'm not going to go through all those specific points, but the number one, from a digitalization perspective, it blocks straight through processing. You're simply not going to achieve straight through processing in the quality aspect if your data is not in a structured and consistent and mature way within your business. And ultimately, trying to move into AI and trying to automate, that becomes one of the biggest issues. And ultimately, that's the 2 biggest levers in order to increase your cost lower, so increase your margin, lower your cost. The second aspect is your brittle core. So we've spoken in numerous forums around the core, and I remember sitting at an InsurTech conference in Zambia, and they went through many conversations across many territories and trying to understand they want to move into automation, they want to move into digitalization and move into AI. At the end of the conference, all the CEOs ultimately agreed the biggest challenge was a brittle core. A core policy administration system that didn't enable the ability to move into the next stage. So what is a brittle core? A brittle core, and funny enough, again, you read the KPMG reports and you'll see that many companies, even in South Africa, are still struggling with outdated legacy systems. A legacy system is a system that just breaks. Everything is tangled, products, pricing, policy, claims, documents. And more importantly, it's not very configurable by the people as a user who uses them. So business users, underwriters, reinsurance people, claims people, they're unable to actually configure the solution. They need to rely on IT, and the rules live in code. So the biggest impact on business there again, slow to market, high cost, automation doesn't work. So moving forward, I think one of the biggest challenges for many organizations is being able to find that resilient AI first core. And the reason for this, I think in the last probably 8 years or so, I've seen more RFPs for organizations looking to change their core policy administration than ever before. And our experience has been quite difficult because organizations are battling with the scope. what they're wanting to do within a policy administration system is they want everything. They want a single system that has got a finance system, it's got AI built in, it's got automation, it's got all the documentation. Ultimately, they want a single system that does everything. And the reality, that's not the design of what a API core should be. An API core is really about a core policy administration that is enabling you to reach out to the market. So clean doors, APIs.
Clinton, I
Yeah.
just want to say, 2 minutes, you need to...
2 minutes, sorry.
Yeah, you need to wrap it.
Short time flies. These rules, modular services, and also from an order perspective. So I think I'm just going to leave it there. I just really wanted to land 2 or 3 points. And the points was really around, got to go through the actual stages. You've got to go through the stage of digitalisation to get to automation. You've got to have a look at data. And you need to look at your core policy administration solution. So let me leave it there, and I'll hand back to you.
Brilliant. Very well set out. Thank you, Clinton. Yeah, I think it would have been great to give you more time, but in essence, we've got...
So what I'll do is I'll share the full presentation that's got notes and other aspects. Difficult to cover this in 15 minutes, but...
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you so much. Bruce, if you don't mind taking up the next slot, yeah, I think you can segue quite nicely into this because you've been involved with many companies, not as a platform provider or anything like that, but as a consultant and as a provider of solutions to actually help them get their foot in the water and to try and start that digitalization journey. So, Bruce, thank you very much. Over to you.
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. Thank you, Tony. Thanks, Clinton. Nice to meet you, Elliot. Absolutely. So, I mean, as you mentioned in your intro, Tony, you and I have had the singular pleasure of actually working together and trying, even though it was quite a while ago, to implement a lot of this stuff. So yes, just a quick rounding off of my intro. I'm down as the COO of Quest, which is a Middle East-based digital insurance operation. But that is one of the major hats I wear. The other major hat I wear is I run as Tony said, I run a small distribution consultancy called Case Johnson, and I guess I'll be more talking about things from that point of view. But for me, distribution is very much, obviously, I'm stating the obvious, driven by tech more than ever. When I started, I would say it was driven by data, but not always the most award-winning tech, but now it's data and tech in concert, working super well together. And now with the advent of AI in the last 3 years or so, this is the changing landscape in which I operate. But I'm very much a distribution guy. I'm not primarily a tech guy. I'm the guy who thinks of himself as the jockey, who tries to win races riding on the horse that is tech. But I'm not the horse. So if that makes sense, I also just have one screen to one slide to share. Just give me a second. Tell me if this is visible to everybody.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, if you can just make it full screen.
Full screen, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to make it full screen and then we're off. We're off. All right. Everybody can see that okay?
Yeah.
All right, guys. So my story is going to be about essentially the digital customer journey. That's my thing. As I said, I'm a distribution guy. I'm very passionate about this. And for me, the right place to start is by framing this whole discussion around what I think is the core truth, that the customer is at the center of the present and absolutely the future. And that in today's market, customer experience is, in my view, the most powerful differentiator, even more than price. The way you treat your customer, the perceived value they receive, as well as the actual value, is, I believe, the source of competitive advantage into the future more than anything. So to me, a digital savvy customer expects an experience from their insurance company that's on par with the one they receive from retail and banking. And I would say, and I choose those two examples because I think they're quite good examples. We get, me personally, and from my experience, fairly good experience from banking, which is like our sort of cousin, if you like, our sort of industry cousin. Retail also, I think, is another one to compare to. What I've seen around the other markets I operate in, I would say, besides South Africa, it's the Middle East. We're not there yet. We're not on a par yet. But I think the goal is to make it a seamless, user-friendly journey, to think of that as a non-negotiable for customer retention and growth. And the reason, you see me there, I'm the COO of this operation called Quest. I'm the COO because distribution is very much about execution. And there's no point, you can talk forever about distribution strategies and consult and advise and do PowerPoints, but I've placed myself in the role of being the head of execution because it's pointless if your distribution strategies and putting the customer first isn't executed correctly. And the question I always ask whenever we do anything is, how will the customer see it? And a lot of what I'm going to say and what I have said seems like blindingly obvious. And a lot of you might think, why does he even need to say that? We already know that because it's forgotten again and again and again. Insurance executives like to use certain words. I'm among them. But when we use words with the customer, you have to use different words. It has to be simple. It has to be in terms they understand. We need to also accept that insurance is not the most high engagement transaction in their day. It's much less than, let's say, a cell phone or a flight ticket where they get deeply into it. They want it to be simple. It's a grudge purchase. How does the customer see it? For me, that's critical, and the customer experience is critical. And digital offers us a unique opportunity to get that right and to compete, with that at the center. The next point is this shift from the quote and buy thinking to the engage and retain thinking. For me, that's also essential. We should relook at traditional insurance sales processes. It's not just about converting a sale, converting leads, converting them into sales. It's about building this relationship that, yes, begins with an effortless quote. It has to, yes, be a good price. The features have to be competitive and easy to understand. But it has to continue through transparent onboarding, and it has to be maintained with proactive, and proactive I think is key, and tech and the digitalization of the way we deal with our sort of customers can be the key to being proactive. Proactive engagement that adds value throughout the policy life cycle. And all of this really speaks to the whole idea of this positive customer experience, which I mentioned in the first point. That is an imperative. It's increasingly more about that, in my view, more even than price and features. And obviously, I think it's implied here that a highly effective CRM system is key. Something that can automate, the process of once you've onboarded somebody, knowing when is the right time to make them a little offer, to remind them of something, re-explain something, to reinforce what we think, that was the reason they bought from us in the first place. So that to me is key. The next point here is to also do the shift of thinking about solving for friction, not just features, right? And so for me, it's starting with a focus on the key pain points, the pain points that would cause users to abandon their digital journeys. Because again, I think we've all seen that 100 times. Starts off well, hits a snag, it's not seamless, it's complicated, it's too much to think about, it's not straightforward. And this includes things like complex forms, jargon-heavy language, and sometimes a lack of personalized options. But I realize it sounds contradictory to say sometimes too many personalized options. So there's no right answer, but the trick is to be aware of that. Offer some personalization, because one can also personalize later on, I think. So for me, it's about having a focus that is on how to design intuitive interfaces and simplify your processes as much as one can to remove the friction and to boost the conversion rates, and very much also the retention rates. For me, that's really important. So this point for me is, in a nutshell, to make it easy, to make it simple, to make it smooth and better than the others. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you can at least say, we're better than a lot of our competitors. And we're getting better, but that's a great start. Then the next one is personalization through data, not just demographics. Again, it seems obvious, but it's sometimes hard to implement. So this is a big topic in what's already been discussed, as well as topics after lunch. But the idea here is to move beyond a one-size-fits-all approach. It's already obvious that companies need to leverage data and analytics to improve customer experiences. And they do this by analyzing the behavior and the needs of every customer, which goes beyond demographics. So traditional targeting, and it wasn't called personalization traditionally, but it was demographic driven. And now we have data. So everyone's talking about data. It's very hard to get it right. And there are going to be some great sessions that go into this in much more detail. But it's about things like products that can be better tailored, but also communications that can be more relevant and more proactive, and the experiences that can become truly personalized in a way that can build trust and loyalty, and very much linked to the brand. And brands that become known in the mind of the consumer as, wow, they've got this uncanny knack of offering me what I need. They've got this uncanny knack. That becomes a brand equity thing, which I think can make a massive difference. All right, then the next point is the role of the digital ecosystem. This word ecosystem we use a lot, but I think it's for good reason. It's a good word. So, I mean, as I think most people in this gathering already realize, a successful digital journey is no longer built on a single platform. Very rarely is it built on a single platform. It's very much about, obviously, integrating various technologies and partners. Partnerships are massive in many of the more successful forms of distribution. And it's integrating core systems with insurtechs. And it's about creating a unified end-to-end experience. So for example, my firm, Case Johnson, and the work I do, in the Middle East, whilst very focused on distribution, or the other word I like to use for instead of distribution is revenue, or winning and keeping customers, which is obviously critical. but not obvious to many, not obvious to the traditional insurance mindset, which was always about manufacturing and distribution is left to brokers. So let's leave distribution because brokers have got a good handle on that. We're about manufacturing great products. This obviously has changed a while ago, and that change is just gathering momentum. So, for example, yeah, you know, what I was saying is, even though in my work I'm very focused on distribution, but I'm not a tech guy. I am hell of a focused on creating the broader ecosystems, the broader sort of digital ecosystems, because without that I can't do my job. So I think, yeah, I think, I mean, what so Clinton was mentioning earlier with his experience at sort of SSP, that's a much deeper perspective, you know, that he has and that he offered on technical components and the software solutions that enable the kind of integration that I'm talking about. So yeah. The next point after that is the omni-channel experience, which I believe is a non-negotiable. And again, it's sometimes hard to do. And it's solved through smart tech. The point to emphasize here is that the customer journey clearly doesn't just happen on a single channel. Any successful digital strategy has to be omni-channel. Again, you just look at yourself. Well, I always say it's dangerous to think of yourself as representative of your target market, but you can a little bit, as long as you accept it's one anecdote. But there's empirical evidence to support the idea that humans, when they're talking to brand X, insurance brand X, they'll sometimes want to call you. Then they want to chat on WhatsApp, on a bot. Then they might want to email you. It's up to them. And we should be offering them many channels. So obviously, a successful digital strategy has to be omni-channel. It has to allow customers to move seamlessly between these things, between websites, between apps, between their chat on social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc., and even human agents. And I say even because it used to be very much about human agents, but we all know the way the wind's blowing. And all of these channels have to be able to deal with the customer without losing context. And the context is key. And again, that's traditionally solved by CRM systems. And for now, I still use the phrase a CRM system because it's a phrase we all understand. And if we get it right, it ensures convenience and it meets the preferences of diverse customers. So the next point I've got, luckily, I think you can see I'm aiming for the classic 10 points, is the broker's new role in this whole thing, the broker's new role in the digital age, which is interesting. We've got on our panel an independent consultant with lots of experience and a solution sales advisor, and these gents are probably better qualified to address the evolving role of the broker. And I'm sure we'd all agree that far from brokers finding themselves to be redundant, they are faced with a massive opportunity to become smart agents, you could call it, smart agents, smart brokers, empowered by these digital tools to provide even more amazing advice, even more valuable data-driven advice, better than ever before, to be prompted through these tools to advise customers in a way that's more personalized than ever, whilst still maintaining that human touch, especially where it matters most, and especially in the more complex area of sales and in the emotional area of claims. Sales are very complex. Well, when sales are complex, a broker is invaluable. When a claim is heated and it's intense and it's emotional, a broker is amazing. You know, even though I'm very much a direct guy, I like the fact that I have an omni-channel relationship with my insurer, and I like to deal with my broker when it comes to stuff like this. So my next point here is the idea of going from a technology upgrade to a cultural shift. This is a tough one. This is where all the change managers come into their own. And I think every company has to deal with this, even if you don't call it change management. I just decided to call it cultural shift. And the idea here is to stress that my view is that digitization, or I liked the distinction that was made earlier, digitalisation, isn't merely a technology investment. It requires a massively fundamental change in company culture, in the way we think, in the talent we try to attract, and the mindset that we wish to all adopt. It's a massive change, especially for insurers. It's massive for any industry, but when I sometimes, sort of feel a bit sad that the insurance industry often lags behind our sort of fellow industries and our cousin industries, as I like to call it. It's because of the massive challenge we have in shifting culture. I think the most successful insurers are those who foster an innovative culture. Like, guys, we come up with new things here. We're always doing new things, and we're customer-centric. That's what we're about. That's the culture that we want to adopt. We innovate, and we put the customer at the center. That's our culture. And we invest in upskilling our workforce, and we invest in supporting new digital tools. We make sure we've got the right people, and we've got the right tech. And that's the culture we have, and that's what we're about. And if you're a good fit in this company, you'll embrace those things, and you'll see us embracing those things, and you'll see leadership embracing those things. So that's that. Point number 9, the power of proactive engagement.
Bruce, we're sort of running short on time. Could you try and close it out in a minute? Sorry, sir.
I will. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll do it.
We've still got time until 1:30, eh? So I think, yeah, you can do the 9 and 10.
I'll be done in max 4 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, okay, if that's all right. Yeah, if that's all right. Okay. So the power of proactive engagement, a prime example of this would be to think of the claims process, where a positive digital experience can make a huge difference. So instead of waiting for a claim to happen, one can think about how data-driven insights and AI can enable proactive engagement. Little examples that I've seen, like sending policyholders tips during high-risk weather events, or finding ways to simplify the claims process to reduce turnaround times. That's something I find can make a huge difference. I'm a huge believer in claims marketing as a way to build your brand. Make yourself known as somebody who, even if you don't pay out the claim all the time, you resolve the claim quickly. This is a way to build brands and trust. Okay, and then point number 10, aligning stakeholders for success. It's hugely important to have a shared vision, to navigate the complex journey, and to align all the stakeholders, to align the insurer, the broker, the tech partners, and the regulators. And I've done quite a bit of work in countries like Ghana and Nigeria, mostly Ghana, and I've had the privilege of engaging directly with a regulator, where the regulator in Ghana, from my last experience, is incredibly aligned with the industry. They want to all grow the industry, and it's key. And I think if all 4 are aligned, it's great. And then, just when you thought I only had 10 points, I've got an 11th one. Cross-functional execution. So this, to me, is massive. All of the talking we do in sort of conferences like this, to me, it's about execution. It's about how do you implement it. And I'm a huge believer that to implement stuff like this, because of its complexity, it has to be executed in a cross-functional way. And what I mean by that is it's an extension of general management. So general management does not have to be the the biggest expert in technology, the biggest expert in pricing, the biggest expert in marketing, and the biggest expert in sales, but they need to. I like to think of the 80-20 principle. They're cross-functional, and they have 20% of the knowledge that will make 80% of the difference. And that's my closing point, guys. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Bruce, thank you so much.
Thanks,
yeah,
Bruce.
That was very interesting. I think, yeah, we are running a little bit close to the time, but I think it's valuable points and valuable sharing. Bruce, I liked your engage and retain that you mentioned. I think that's very important. And Cover has lately been sort of working in that space, trying to assist with our sort of marketing and communications and brand building history. And I'd like to add to that one, engage, retain, and grow. And we sort of focus on trying to use that engage and retain to actually grow the client and grow the business that can be done with the client. And I think nobody better positioned to talk around that than Elliot. Elliot, thank you very much for your patience in waiting your turn. Please give us a little bit of your thoughts on the subject.
Thanks, Tony, and thank you, Clinton and Bruce. I'm going to pick up on some of the points you've made, maybe with a few more practical examples. But the point I want to make first, and this is very important, is that I'm older than any of you guys. And why that's relevant is when I started working, Hewlett-Packard introduced the first handheld calculator. It was a thing about the size of a phone. It added, subtracted, multiplied, divided. It did square roots. And it only cost at that time, and I'm talking back in the early to mid 70s, it was the equivalent of about $400 US. And we thought we had died and gone to heaven, that it couldn't get any better than that. And I'm still involved now in businesses that are using AI, and I've seen everything in between. I remember telex rooms and dumb word processing terminals. So I've seen technology come and go. I've seen different uses of data come and go. And the one thing I've learned is that unfortunately, businesses tend to be dedicated followers of fashion. We adopt things simply because they're there and everyone else is doing it. And we don't necessarily consider why we're doing it. You know, you mentioned, I think it was, it might have been Clinton that talked about apps. I remember a few years back when every insurance company rushed out to have an app. Now, I don't know how many people still have them sitting on their phones, but I can tell them that very few of them are actually being used for very good reasons. They didn't ever actually consider how or why a customer uses an app and why a business needs an app. Most of those apps are simply redundant. Now, it doesn't mean that apps are bad or good. Apps have a role to play, as all technology does. And the first point that you have to understand when you're making any decisions about digitization or adopting AI or any of these things in a business is that there's only one reason to do it. And the only reason is if it's going to help you make more money ongoing and on a sustainable basis. And we tend to lose sight of that. We get caught up in the excitement of doing these new things and we rush out and we spend money. But we never, ever tie it back to what we're trying to accomplish strategically in a business. You need to understand what your commercial objectives are. Now, for example, let's say you're a business that has a relatively unique product. Maybe you're a UMA, for example. And the reason that people do business with you is because they want what you have to sell and they don't believe that they can get it anywhere else. If that's the case, your business is predicated on maximizing volume because you really only have one thing to sell. So the things that you do in the business have to be focused on how are you going to be able to achieve economies of scale, reach new customers that you've never reached before, do all of those wonderful things. You're not going to, for example, invest money in a loyalty program because the loyalty is to the product. You only have one thing to sell. If the customer likes the product, they're going to buy it again anyway. You don't have to bribe them. And if they don't like the product, bribing them isn't going to help. But what you do have to do is continually reinvest in product development because that product has to stay leading edge. Otherwise, your clients are going to go somewhere else. Now, if you're a business at the other end that focuses on a very narrowly defined class of customer, PPS, for example, with degreed professionals, they have a very small pool of customers to call on. Their volume is capped. Their objective is fundamentally different. They're looking to maximize the lifetime value that they get out of the relationships they have with their customers. They want to capture them early. They want to keep them for as long as possible. And over the lifetime of those relationships, they want to upsell them to higher value policies. They want to cross-sell them into more and more types of cover, and so on and so forth. Now, their investment isn't necessarily going to be in maximizing volume. It's going to be in maximizing customer insight because that's what they trade on. So they're going to focus on very different things. Now, Bruce spent a lot of time talking about customer experience. Now, there are businesses that do sell, and a lot of brokers fall into this category. They sell products that everybody else sells. And what they're trading on is a preferred way of doing business. Customers come to them not because they think they're going to buy something different, but they prefer the way you do business. They like the way you sell, the way you service them, the way you handle administrative issues, the way you solve claims problems, and so on and so forth. So what you need to build for that again is something very different. Now, it's one thing to do all of these wonderful things, but no business, not even Elon Musk, has infinitely deep pockets. Every business has to make choices between the things that it does and the things that it doesn't do. And that's exceptionally important when you begin to invest in data, technology, and all of these areas, because that can be a very, very expensive trip to take. So you need to make sure that you're doing the right things. And the toughest decisions that you make are not to do nice things that don't really add to your strategy. What happens in those instances is that you end up as a jack of all trades, master of none. You have a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of the other thing, but you're not particularly good at anything. The objective is to own certain things that align with what you're trying to achieve strategically, that are going to make you the money. And to do that, you have to avoid spending money on everything else. Okay? It's a law of sacrifice. You got to give stuff up in order to own other stuff. And those are the toughest decisions you ever take in business because no one likes to give stuff up. Everyone always believes if I only have another product to sell, another type of policy, I have another distribution channel to put it down, another customer to call on, I'm going to make more money. And that jack of all trades, master of none reason is why when I started in business, my first job was actually with a department store chain in New York called Bloomingdale's at a time when department stores had 65% of the retail fashion market, not just in the US, in the UK, in South Africa. At the time, it was Greaterman, Stutterford's, John Orr's, Garlick's. The OK was a department store. Where are they today? They're all gone because they were jack of all trades and masters of none. And every industry, including insurance, runs exactly the same risk. If you want to succeed, you have to own something. So the starting point is to understand your strategy. And then there are tools. And today, with things like AI, we can do stuff that not only allow us to become more efficient in our businesses, because when you start talking about technology to companies, the first thing that they talk about is how we're going to do things faster or cheaper. We're going to eliminate paper. We're going to avoid duplication. Those are great things. But bluntly, they're probably in the greater scheme of things, the less important things. They need to be done. But the real game changers aren't the things that are going to make you more efficient. They're the things that are going to make you do business differently and consequently better. Now, I'm the chairman, for example, of a company based in London. It's a global platform. It's not an insurance business. It's a global platform that connects providers of corporate training services to buyers of corporate training services. And we've gone on an AI journey with that company, and it's working incredibly well. Now, the way, for example, in the past, and the way we started, if a buyer of corporate training wanted to search for a provider, they would go through a traditional search engine approach. They would come in and say, the kind of training I want is financial. And then we would break that down from financial to accounting, and then we break accounting into the various subcategories and so on and so forth. What we had with AI was an opportunity to completely rethink how people search for providers. And we created an engine where, rather than specify the kind of training you're looking for, you put in the issues, you describe the issues that you're dealing with in your business. I mean, I've just gone online this morning in preparation for this talk to see what's gone in there in the last 24 hours. One of them here is, client feedback doesn't sit very well with my company. Can we train for better listening and negotiation? Another one, which is very relevant to this topic, AI is taking over many jobs. How do we upskill everyone quickly? Another one of my best people just left. I think it's a management issue. What kind of training do you recommend? Now, what we have in our engine is all the usual data. The way you get listed initially is bluntly, the AI scours what's out there, your website, your LinkedIn page, and we build a little template profile for you. You then, when you become a customer, the paying customers on our platform are the training providers, you can go in and improve that profile, put in what you want, you can put in reviews, you can put in video material that you like, and so on and so forth. So what happens now is that when you put in the problem, the AI searches for companies that could plausibly provide a solution, and it writes up a little story about each, why that particular company could be the solution to your needs. And this business is going incredibly well. It took us a while to get there, but the point is, what we had to do was use the technology, not just to make ourselves more efficient, but to reinvent the way we did business so that we did business better, not just faster or cheaper, although those are also important benefits. Now think about this. If you're in a brokerage, one of the biggest complaints people have about the insurance industry is that it's selling driven. We are people that have policies in our briefcase, and we go out there and say, do you want to buy this? Do you want to buy this? Do you want to buy this? What we now have, for example, are, as I've described for this platform that I'm the chairman of, the ability to actually become proper diagnosticians of our clients' needs and be able to prescribe bespoke solutions to those needs.
Sorry, Elliot.
Underwriters.
3 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
3 minutes.
Underwriters now have the ability to do more complex underwriting than ever before, but even simple products can be designed more bespoke. We can atomize a basic motor policy and sell the client only as much cover as he wants for as long as he wants and leave out the extraneous details. There are many, many ways we can go about improving our business. If your business is trading on customer insight, it will become a gold mine. Now, I'm running out of time. I can't really elaborate any further on this. I just wanted to put it out there that let's change this mindset that technology and data and digitization and AI are simply ways to become more efficient. They are ways to reinvent our businesses so that we can all make more money. And that's my story.
Absolutely, Elliot. Thank you so much. You summed it up. What I wanted to say is that, and I think we started the morning with that, is it's about digitalization as the evolution or the revolution in terms of how we do business, the business as a whole. And this is a huge topic. This session here specifically is sort of encapsulates almost all the topics that we've got today. And yeah, Covers put together a digitalisation masterclass specifically to look at all of these different elements that Bruce, Clinton, and Elliot has addressed, and to unpack that over a day period, because one has to look at it holistically as to the whole business, every aspect of it, to really be able to set the business up for success into the future in a digital environment. It's not, as everybody said, plugging in an app. It's about a business that has to transform. So guys, thank you so much. It was very insightful. Everybody's contribution really added value. It got us thinking about our own world and how we approach digitalization. So thank you so much. And we've got lunchtime now at 1:30, and please guys be back at 2 o'clock. For us we've got 2 extra panel sessions afterwards. So looking forward to that. Clinton, Elliot, Bruce, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you at 2 o'clock.